Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing today? Welcome to Coffee with Connie. I'm Connie Fuksa with Foote Title Group, where we protect your home ownership and make sure that your home closing is smooth and simple and you actually enjoy the process. And we keep you in the loop every step of the way. So a lot of times we talk about things about real estate, but we most often talk about the buyer's side of those processes because their part of the process is usually a lot more involved. And so there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of different pieces that are questions that come up all of the time. But sometimes I like to talk about the seller's responsibilities and the things the seller has to look at or be prepared for so there's no confusion, so that the seller is aware and expecting some questions to be asked about some things that they are involved in or they're responsible for. And so I really wanted to touch base on some of those things because their responsibilities are just as important, because as a seller, you are actually selling a home, and we have to make sure that all of those pieces are in place for you and for the person purchasing your home, that everything that you have is in a nice package and ready to go when you're ready to go to closing. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about that seller responsibility and some of those pieces that need to be gathered in order for everything to go smoothly. So if you're selling your home, there's a couple of things you're going to need to make sure that you have on hand. So once you get an offer from someone to buy your house, then you decide if you're going to accept that offer or not. And then the buyers start working on their end on getting their loan together and making sure all of their pieces are put together. But some things are going to happen on your end. First, obviously, there's probably going to be a home inspection done, and after the buyer does that, there's going to be some things that they may ask you to take care of. Maybe it's a great home inspection and there's nothing wrong with your house. It's absolutely in pristine condition and the home inspector didn't find anything. But typically they find at least one thing. So those are things that you may need to address. But let's talk about some things that you need to do between then and closing to be ready for your closing. So do you have a loan on your property? Do you owe someone that you make a mortgage payment to every single month? You're going to need to gather that information. Who do you make the payments to? What's the account number? A contact information for that company. And you're probably going to be asked the last 4 digits of your social, because most of the mortgage companies will not give us information about that loan payoff without that. We won't ask for your full social, but typically they'll ask us for the last 4 digits of your social. We'll probably need an authorization from you to ask for that payoff statement, because we're going to need to get a statement that shows what the balance is on that loan so we can make sure that we're paying off the accurate balance. And the reason that that's a concern is because that loan is secured against that property. So when you transfer that ownership from you to a buyer, that buyer wants to make sure that they own 100% of that property and there's no mortgage company that has an interest in it or no owner that has an interest. So we're going to make sure that that loan is paid off. So we have to request from that lender a payoff statement that gives us an actual balance of what needs to be paid off in order for them to agree to release the loan from the security of that property. So we are going to request a payoff statement. We're going to actually pay that loan off through the closing, and then we're going to follow up and make sure we get a release to make sure that loan is released from the ownership of that property. So you're going to want to gather that loan information. If you have more than one loan, maybe you took out a second home equity line or a second mortgage because you were doing some things around your house or you needed it to purchase the home. So we would need information on all the loans you have that are secured by that property. Now, when I say that, sometimes people don't realize that the home equity line that they took out to buy their car, to put their children through college, to do some improvements on their home, that loan is more than likely secured against your property as well and must be paid off and must be released. So unfortunately, sometimes we've had where someone had an equity line and it was paid off, and before we could actually get the loan released from the property, after the closing, they went and withdrew money on that equity line. Well, that equity line is no longer a loan that you can access. That loan has to be paid off and released from that property. In order to have that equity line, that bank has it secured against your property. So you can't draw any more off of that at any time through the closing process. So we would need to, again, request request the payoff information on that loan and make sure that loan's released after the closing. So gathering all of your loan information is going to be really important. Then we need to talk about who owns the property, because those people are all going to need to sign off on all of the paperwork, anybody who has an ownership interest. So maybe you own a piece of property with your parents because they co-signed for you. Well, when you go to sell that piece of property, they're going to have to sign their interest as well. So you're going to need them to sign off on all of the paperwork. So we're going to have to think through the logistics of that if they're not local, or even if they are local and maybe they can't take off work, or however that happens. We're going to need to have a conversation about that, because those people are going to need to be present to sign those documents at some level. And so we're going to have a conversation talking that through. Maybe if you're selling a piece of property that you don't own, but you have power of attorney for someone else, we're going to need to walk through some of those steps. Maybe your brother or your sister is in the military and is out of the country, and you have a power of attorney to sign for them. We're going to need to have that conversation before closing, because we're going to need to look at that power of attorney, make sure all the pieces are right in order to meet the legal requirements to transfer that ownership. Maybe you are the person signing off on a piece of property that maybe it was one of your parents or somebody that you know that has passed away, and that property is now in an estate. So what are the pieces that we need to know about that? So there's some things about that we're going to have to talk about before closing as well. So those are some steps, some processes, maybe some thoughts that need to happen, and conversations that need to happen before closing, because there are things that are going to need to be addressed before everyone sits down at the table. And so we want to make sure that you guys understand that there's just some extra pieces that we're going to have to take care of to make sure all of the pieces of the puzzle are together. So when everybody sits down for that closing, that it goes smoothly and everybody has all of their pieces taken care of. So, hey, thanks so much for tuning in, you guys, today. I really appreciate it. Melanie, good to see you. Hey, Mark, how are you? Hey, Kelly, good morning. Thank you all for tuning in. So if you're selling a piece of property, again, recapping just a little, you're going to need to know and have available all of the mortgage information for any mortgages that you make payments on that property. Maybe you owe someone for a judgment or a lien on that property. Maybe you had a tax issue and IRS has a lien on the property. We're going to need that information. And IRS takes a little bit more time, so we're going to need to look at that really early in the process. It takes a little more time to get that payoff taken care of. So we're going to need that information immediately once you guys know that you have a good contract, you know that the home inspection is good, then we need to start talking about some of these other pieces just to make sure that we have plenty of time to take care of anything that might come up. Do you know of any unusual nuances about the property that you're selling? Maybe the next door neighbor has a access point through a piece of that property, and maybe you want to make sure that we know about that before we order the title. Yes, when we order the title, we're going to find out some of these things, but maybe it's something that we need to get an answer or a sign off from someone else. Do you use a private road to get to your property? Maybe we're going to need to address some of that before closing, because we may need to have some of the neighbors sign off on something to make the lender comfortable with what they are going to require to get to closing. So anything that you know about, even though you think we're going to find out when we do the search of the title, you definitely want to tell us in advance, because any of that additional timing will give us plenty of time to make sure that we've got all the pieces together for everybody and there's no hiccups and there's no confusion of you trying to run around and chase things down at the last minute. That's the last thing we want to do, so we want to make sure we've got all that square. So just some thoughts there. Anything you know about your property, getting your mortgage information together, if somebody isn't attending closing that you know is an owner on the property, if there is somebody that should be able to sign off on the document and isn't available for some reason, power of attorney, in a state situation, if you know someone has an interest or an access right to your property, so let's talk about that before closing. So I encourage you to ask questions, to talk to the company doing the closing, to make sure that all of those steps are taken care of long before you get close to the closing, so nobody has any problems or hiccups. So hopefully I gave you some food for thought this morning. And if you're selling a piece of property and you have additional questions, you can always reach out to anyone on our team. You can find them on our website, www.footetitlegroup.com. There's also a sellers page on our website that has all kinds of resources that answers a lot of these questions. There's a calculator on there that can help you calculate some costs if you're thinking about those. There's all kinds of resources. There's links if you're in Maryland and you're selling a piece of property property and you don't live in Maryland anymore and you're questioning the withholding tax, there's a link there to the Maryland site that tells you exactly what to do, any forms that need to be filled out. So, and we can also navigate that for you. But if you want to go in and look around in there, that's a great place to get some of those resources. So hopefully I helped you answer some questions, maybe brought up some thoughts on some things that you might be thinking about. And as I said, always please reach out to me and let me know if there's something I can answer for you. And if you found what we talked about today interesting or valuable, I should say, please hit the share button and share with those people that you know, because even if you didn't necessarily need the information, but you thought it was valuable, there's probably going to be somebody out there that you know in your circle of influence that might have the same question. So I would really appreciate it if you would share, because sharing is caring. So thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Hey there, Lauren. How are you this morning? Good morning, Miss Carrie. How are you today? I really appreciate your time. As always, keep tuning in. Let me know if you have questions. Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee with Connie. I'm Connie Fuksa with Foote Title Group, where we protect your home ownership. You guys have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.